Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone across the APAC region and around the world. Welcome to our first LinkedIn and WeChat live streaming session presented today by CoachHub. We are live, and so if you are having a great day, smash that like button in front of you or put a comment in and let us know how you're feeling. To our friends in Greater China, ni hao. To our friends in Japan, konnichiwa. To everyone else who's joining us today, a very warm hello and thank you for spending your time with us. We are bringing together our lifelong learning series. So today you can expect to see from experts within the HR and L&D leadership community located here in Asia Pacific with experience from a diverse background of industries and sectors. And they'll be here to dialogue, to discuss and debate all things close to our heart around people development. So I encourage all of you who are here with us today, pop your questions, your comments, your thoughts, likes in the section below, and we'll make sure that we address those through our expert panel towards the end of our call. We also have a very surprise lucky draw, so please do stay on till the end of the session. You won't want to miss it. So to kick things off, I'd like to introduce CoachHub's APAC Head of Behavioural Science, Yudan Shi, who'll showcase some of the latest research and trends on learning and development.
Thank you, team.
Thank you, Yudan.
Thank you, team. Hello from Sydney, Australia. My name is Yudan Shi. As Tim mentioned, a little bit about myself. So yes, I lead the behavioral science team for Asia Pac, but I was also, to tell the truth, a very frustrated learner for many years, which let me be here today. Let me explain why. So before I became an executive coach and behavioral scientist, I was a chief marketing officer for a global tech company. Although I may have looked like doing very well externally, I remember I was often very frustrated at work. I wanted to be a better communicator. I wanted to managing better relationships. You can imagine all of these competencies amazing HR and learning leaders love give to us as leaders. And I would read tons of books because I actually do like reading, tons of training. But for some reason, at the end of each year, I would receive same feedback over and over. And that was very frustrating. So I started disliking feedback. To tell the truth, I was a little not liking 360 especially. If I sounded like one of your leaders today, you are not alone. Eventually, I had to ask for help and I went to work with a coach. I, for some reason, may be fortunate, but I gained so much understanding about myself working with my coach, even just in the first 1 or 2 sessions, more than what my numerous degrees and somehow the leadership offsites I used to go to that could give to me. And to me, that was a life-changing moment for me. Hence, I changed my career and here I am today. So today, I am really privileged because I am a member of Coaching Lab, the R&D Center for Coaching Hub. And as a team, we are really passionate about what makes people motivated to learn. And we have a joint passion, which is to bridge the gap between science and business. I think it's an understatement to say that there's never a better time for learning professionals. Learning and development is truly at the center of everything, whether it's part of people's strategy or part of the business strategy. If you look at the latest LinkedIn Workplace Learning Report, the #1 driver of great work culture is people want the opportunities to learn and grow, and going from #9 in 2019. So I am absolutely curious and excited about today's session because I want to know and learn as a profession how we can work together to create an environment that helps our people, including ourselves actually, to thrive and flourish. Now, we also have some challenges. First of all, we have information overload every single day. Let me just pause for a second and ask every one of you, before you come to the LinkedIn live session, how many posts, learning content, video podcasts you may have come across before coming to the LinkedIn session? I can bet between different platforms, whether it's between work or outside work, you would have likely have seen dozens or maybe hundreds of that. I think it's safe to say in the history of time, I know I'm almost sound like exaggerating, but learning has never been so accessible yet so overwhelming at the same time. I wish I could see some, in-person hands in the room, but I can tell you that's how I feel, excited and overwhelming at the same time. And this is a paradox, I know. When we feel overloaded, though, the downside of learning is that we find difficult to do deep learning, the quality learning. And that is one thing I hear so often from our customers, that our people tell me they do not have time to learn. And lastly, just because we can now access a lot of learning, especially thanks to curated e-learning content, it doesn't necessarily mean we are transferring the knowledge into real life skills. These are real challenges we're facing as learning professionals at the workplace. And if we don't work out a new way of learning to manage these things, we will create what I call learning wastage. In other words, a lot of investments, but might not be as effective in the long run. So what does this mean to all of us? I believe what it means to us is fundamentally learning can no longer be a standalone activity or program. Learning needs to be embedded into our daily work. Learning actually needs to become the way of working. Because the challenge of so many traditional learning is that when learning is treated as a standalone activity or something we do outside our work when we just have a little bit more time, is that there is lack of learning transfer and real life skill. Majority of content, as much as I know it sounds astonishing, especially for people who, like me once upon a time, love reading books, love listening to podcasts, up to 75% of content will be forgotten if not implemented within 6 days after training, what we call forgetting curve. This is huge, meaning there's a lack of transferring from theoretical knowledge to actual workplace application. And this is part of the reason why so many of us might like training, find it insightful and exciting, but when we look at the effectiveness in the long run, it's quite low. And this is especially true when we look at developing leadership skills. Leadership skills, or traditionally we might call it soft skills, in Coach Hub, we prefer to borrow the term power skills, where Josh Basin has promoted extensively in 2019 at the beginning of pandemic. Skills such as empathy, curiosity, self-awareness are increasingly key to success, whether you're individual contributors or an executive general manager, as an example. These skills might sound soft and easy, but really complex to learn and master, as it requires a lot of self-awareness and practice and daily feedback loop. For instance, if I want to become an active listener, I need to be able to practice that every day rather than sitting in a workshop and somehow miraculously hoping I can just do that naturally. So what does new learning look like? Well, we believe that the new way of learning needs to happen throughout our working days, what I call working moments or learning moments. Learning becomes a habit. My colleague Shami and I developed this circle for one of our clients, actually. So a simple example, and we call this learning in the flow of work. Now, a simple example could be, if I use the previous example again, I want to be more active listener. I might have just watched an e-learning content, that is the knowledge piece. But then I will set that as a focus area for myself for next fortnight and create some goals, maybe just practice one meeting a day. And then I would want to make myself accountable. So I would share with my workmates that I have this as my focus area for next fortnight, and can I come to you for feedback? And once I have the real-time feedback, I might just create a 10 minutes a day to reflect, did I do well, or what do I need to do differently? This is just an example in learning in the workflow, where you not only consume the knowledge, but you also apply it at the same time. And I believe the implication of this for HR and learning leaders is quite huge, because I believe, or I like to believe, that the future of the role we play isn't just about the what, which is the content, the learning content. I believe our role is going to shift, is that we're going to teach people how to become self-directed learner, which is the process of learning. Next slide. At Coach Hub, we talk to hundreds of innovative clients every day who are very interested in this new way of learning, whether they are not only interested in teaching their employees knowledge, but also creating a personalized and safe space for them to learn how to apply this knowledge in their day-to-day work through coaching, working with a coach, and in combination with different learning methods. For instance, micro-learning, goal setting, feedback, micro moments, stretch projects. We think this is a very fun way of learning, and learning should be fun. We also believe this way of learning can allow people to learn continuously in bite sizes rather than have to wait, like when work is not as busy, when I have downtime. Well, unfortunately, for most of us, we are always busy most of the time. So later on, I'm super keen to hear all the panelists, how you also creating ways helping your people learn and grow in this fast-paced and ever-changing world. So I'm going to wrap it up. I'm pretty excited what the future looks like in the learning space. Looking at 2022 and beyond, leadership and upskilling across the globe is topping the L&D agenda. This is absolutely a tremendous opportunity for us to work together. Okay, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you for being here, and I'm going to pass back to Tim McCartney, our host and head of Asia Pac for Coach Hub.
Thank you so much, Yudan. Thank you, Yudan. Excellent, and great to have some of your insights from your expertise and the Coach Hub Coaching Lab to kick us off today. As we speak to the secrets of successful L&D programs. Now, we have 4 panelists that we'll be introducing in a moment, and looking forward to hearing from them today. So a big warm welcome to Bhavna Gandhi, who is Human Resources Director at Sodexo, to Jacelyn Voon, who's General Manager of People, Culture and CSR and Head of Human Resources for Fujifilm, to Garth Quinn, Head of People Experience at Healius, and Fiona Glendinning, Head of People APAC at Coach Hub. A very warm welcome to you all. Thanks for joining us today. So let me jump straight into the questions. The L&D and HR leaders role doesn't seem to get any easier, especially given the last 2 years, and now with the great reshuffle, tight labour market, and a very shaky feeling economic climate. Companies seem to be moving from a growth at any cost mindset to a profitability at lower cost mindset. So Bhavna, perhaps starting with you, what kind of scrutiny are you seeing in 2022 that has changed from last year?
Thanks so much for hosting this event and giving this opportunity to share the perspective. I think, in 2022, this scrutiny has definitely gone up, but I would say that, this is a continuation what we started to see in 2020 and 2021. So on the one hand, scrutiny has definitely gone up. CFOs are asking a lot of questions, looking for much more impact, but it's in a continuation. It's not a surprise scrutiny in this year. Tim, you spoke about in the current context, and I want to add to the current context. You said that, in the current context, we had that element of a great reshuffle, labor market and economic outlook. What we've also started to notice is, and so are our CFOs, there is an element of hybrid work, which has come in last 2 years, to an accelerated speed. Jobs are changing faster than ever what we've seen before. And the expectations from the managers are changing. So I think the good news is that CFOs are very much aware of this rapidly changing context. one of the things which we are seeing a lot of scrutiny from the CFOs are specifically in the leadership development area. In the past, I think there were a lot of development focus on the functional skills, and the leadership development was primarily for the top leaders. Wherein in last 2 years, I think the leadership has become much more democratized, and we've realized that we have to develop leaders across all the organization, and there is an intensive effort from the HR side to develop these leaders, and that's where we are seeing a lot of scrutiny, Tim.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Bhavna. That's so interesting. Maybe over to you, Garth. What's your perception? How have you seen 2022 different to last year?
Yeah, look, here in Australia, and we're in the healthcare sector, so the whole pandemic has really knocked around those people who want to be part of this industry. They want to continue, they want to change. So I think one of the things that we're seeing is the lack of ability to buy people from the open market. So attract new candidates, attract new talent means that we need to look internally and see what capabilities, what skills we have that we can build on, which has given us a little bit more of an opportunity to look internally and develop those people. So the scrutiny is more around what skills do we have now, what skills do we need in the future, things like digital skills, IT, data, these type of things that aren't traditionally associated with a transactional health company are becoming more important. And how do we start focusing on those skills and building those skills internally, because it's not really easy to go out and get them in the open market right now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So the internal piece is critical for you, Garth. And Jasali, what's your perspective at Fujifilm?
I think for my industry, because we have been in the market for many years, so this is nothing new, especially people always say doing more with less, right? Mm-hmm. So how can we make good use of our resources to optimize the return? So of course, with all these shift, like focusing from growth versus margins, or the market dynamic, the pressures, and a lot of competition. So we look at internal, external. What are the things that we need? Like, for example, what are the good to have versus must have or nice to have? Then you have to prioritize, because what we have is a limited resources, right? Be it money or human. So we need to make good use of every single cent. So of course, things like the manpower cost and training is always on the top of the list. How do we balance between the key B trade strategies of manpower? Are we going to buy, as in hire from external? Are we going to borrow, get internal transfer from any cross-country who are more mature and readily available skill, and where we also need to pay for expatriates package, right? Or build strategy. It's like, are we going to invest in our people, whether or not are we able to get the maximum returns from the people that we put in money into it, and they're able to stay with us and grow with us. So these are the pressures, or I would say HR professionals today here needs to think more in depth. Especially in my company, we are transforming our business. We are moving from hardware business to a service and solutions, and that's why a lot of focus on value selling, and how do we position sellings in the market that's offering service and solution versus the hardware driven. So all these we have to come in place to look at the 3B approach to make good use of what we have, because at the end of the day, like what you say, growth, profitability, or cost at all costs. I mean, cost at what was it called? Lower cost at all. So with that, we have to measure any hiring that we put in place. What is the ROI in terms of the sales return? So we will have to look into employee productivities, and also what's it called? Sales in return. So these are the things that we have to justify, even just about training or headcount or upskilling. All this is something that is important to the business.
Thank you, Jasali. The ROI comment is a really interesting one. It comes up in L&D space time and time again. We hosted a dinner of HR executives back in May, and that discussion around L&D, ROI, and investments that were made pre or at the start of the pandemic to ensure that we were creating learning culture, learning environments, and now starting to get a bit of a view in terms of whether that's the most effective way, or perhaps management has a perception around orienting to at-risk talent segments, and perhaps that links to the war for talent and all the different talent segments that some of you identified. Thank you so much for sharing. Fiona, if I can pivot to you, as we think about value, do you believe that there is a difference in how success or value is perceived if the L&D function sat under HR versus the business? So should L&D be a separate standalone function in itself?
Thanks, Tim. And I think this is such a great question. And I think I would be really interested actually in the comments from our audience as well. If you've got any thoughts with respect to this, please put it in the chat function. I'm a head of HR, so I may have a vested interest in this answer. I'm going to be slightly controversial, but I think what we're looking to see is a transition to the L&D function moving towards being a standalone function. And I say this because of the value it can deliver to the organisation. And of course, it's always going to work hand in glove with HR, and that relationship is critical. But the role that it can play is just becoming more and more important to the organisation. And as a result, I do believe that there is a very strong argument for having it as a standalone function. And I say that for a couple of reasons. The first reason is, and I keep, in every discussion I have, I seem to be referencing the past couple of years that we've all been through. And I know none of us want to go back there. But gee, we've had such an incredible amount of learning as a result of that. And for me, I think what I have discovered with respect to the L&D function after the past couple of years is how critical and important it is as a lever of success for the business. It really became elevated over the past couple of years, because what we're finding is then and more now, organisations are really looking to constantly enhance their capabilities. And I hate that terminology, future-proof. I'm not quite sure that we can ever future-proof, but I think the last 2 years taught us that L&D has a really critical role to play in supporting our organisations become more and more ready for whatever black swan might be around the next corner. So I think it's a critical lever for success. The second reason, and I've only got three, but the second reason is that I just see leaders in our function, and I say this collectively across HR, but also across L&D, that we really are early adopters. We're leaders of innovation and disruption. We look at how to do things differently and how to be more effective. And I think we've really seen that recently as people move away from more traditional means of delivering learning to more customised ways. And I think we've all experienced that. So I think that the L&D function has a real role to play with respect to innovation in organisations, and innovation is very critical. And then the third reason, and I think this is really important, is that when L&D becomes a bit of a standalone, they're in a really powerful role where they can reshape the capabilities and the organisational culture. It's such a critical, and we know culture eats strategy for breakfast. So it's such a powerful role. And I think what I'm seeing across the L&D function is that it's moving from being a training organisation to a transforming organisation. I just see, again, that's such an exciting place to play. And I'm seeing more and more L&D functions really grab hold of that opportunity to look at how they can influence the organisational culture, so that learning is no longer just an HR function. And ultimately what we're doing here, and hats off to everyone who's here today, is we're creating a roadmap to build a stronger workforce for our organisations. And what's more important than that, than building a stronger workforce for our organisation? So not that I'm trying to put forward any kind of compelling argument here, but I really do believe that what we'll see as L&D starts to grasp hold of this opportunity is that more and more executives will see that it does make sense for it to become a standalone function. Slightly controversial, and you know, maybe not something that all heads of HR might want to hear, but I think that there is a real argument for it moving in that direction.
You seem to have a few head nods from our other panelists on the line. So let's talk a little bit further around measurement. Bhavna, how do you currently measure the success of your learning and development programs?
Sure. So Tim, I think we are no different than many organizations, and I think when it comes to the ROI or the measurement of the program, I think I personally feel that we can do much better job there. When it comes to the measuring the return of investment of the L&D program or the talent management effort, there are two parts to it. One is the content of it, and the second is context. And I think there is so much focus which we put on measuring the outcome of the content, but we kind of totally discount the context measurement. So just to answer your question, how are we doing it at Sodexo? So I think we are doing it at the two levels. We are looking at two things. What are the gaps in terms of the employees? What are the skill gaps of the existing population? And then the second assessment which we look at is that, you know, in terms of the strategic direction which business has decided to choose, how are we supporting and how are we showing the result because of the efforts what we are doing. But I must say that, you know, it is a very difficult battle to justify and to win, because there are so many contexts in, you know, other factors that are hard to measure. And unfortunately, you know, we tend to have some sort of a measure which we can easily and conveniently churn on a regular basis and show to the business leaders. Yeah. But then that measure is not very comprehensive. We are in a state of affair which is always changing. So I think we have some opportunity to do a little bit better there. But curious to hear what others are doing.
Justification being the key word there. Perhaps Jasali, how do you position investments to CFOs and leaders? How do you secure their buy-in?
You know, actually, back to what Bhavna has said, I think what she said is absolutely right. I think I must also admit that L&D program is not a straightforward thing. Like what she says, the context. I think most of the, I mean, in the olden days or even now, L&D always send out the post-training survey or feedback to determine the success level. So I think the gaps here is the application, which is the how do they apply. And then again, our dear Dan also mentioned, he then says that trainings work away and information retention decline over time, and probably the sustainability is 6 days. So how in Fujifilm we measure? I mean, we use a different approach where, for example, like because we are transforming our business from service and solutions, right? Then we need to understand how to sell the value selling and upskill our people from hardware centric selling the features of the product to services. How can we offer services to the client, right? So with that, what we did was find out the threshold or find out where are we today at today's stage. So essentially what we did was we get the sales to do a presentations. We act as customers, get them to present and show us how do they engage and how do they put the content together and how they pitch the sales. And for us, management leader, we act as a customers, we do rating, assessment, and look at where are they stand in the market. Are they able to meet their customers' expectations of selling the value proposition? So we got the result and it was quite shocking. That whoa, this is how our people are as of today. Because changing from a hardware to service and solution is not easy. That's why, are we going to buy strategy? We just buy people from external, buy people from company that has matured in selling solution. Yeah, that's easy. But how do we retain our people? And that's the dilemmas where HR and L&D have to come together to find the best solutions. And the ROI will be, okay, we, of course, L&D will start to invest because that is our threshold, right? Saying that, okay, based on today's state, this is the rating of our people based on the value presentation that they did. And L&D will come in to say that with all this curriculum, we're going to make them apply. It's not just attend courses and learn from the lecturer or the facilitator. They do it, having the material, do it. And then we have another set, which is manager coaching. So get the manager to understand the principle and the applications of the value selling. Then the manager will have to do coaching. Because coaching is where they will start to learn what they have learned and apply it at work. So instead of 7 days diminishing the knowledge, because managers have equipped with the template and guideline of how to embed all the application into it. And with that, then that is how we could measure the success. And then how do we testify whether or not it's success? Of course, we said that it's easy to say, I mean, the CFO will definitely say, the revenue increase or not. If the revenue not increase, that means the training is not effective. But we turn it in a way that we get the employee to present again and see the quality of their presentations based on the assessment sets we did initially. And that's where you see the gaps, whether or not they improve. You take a 6 months, 9 months, and 1 year time to look at the progress. Because learning takes time to embed into it, because that is how people, from a behavior to become habits, right? I think what Yiden says is all valid with all her psychology studies. I really find it's 100% relevant in the learning of context. So to sell the ideas to the CFO for the buy-in is to show them where is the baseline and where do we want to achieve at the end of the day. And that is the ROI. And where are we today for employee per cost to employee per cost that we are going to achieve. So using a metric to prove success and to prove that what we need is what you're going to get from the L&D.
I want to build on to Justin said that I think somewhere, in HR function, we are very much solution focused and we sell our solutions. We are not great in telling people about problems, the issues which we are facing, and how do we really make them fully aware of the problems. So I think many times we go to the CFOs when we have ready solution, and I think that's a missed opportunity. When you have a problem, talk about them and bring them on board, talk to them again and again and tell them that what solution they say, because the moment that they nail the solution, that is your solution, because there is no other way. So I think sometimes we have to be less solution centric and really talk to the CEOs at the time of problems so that we onboard them in that. So I think that's another aspect which I thought I would share.
Thank you. And that aligns really nicely to comments that Garth has shared with us around managing or connecting the dots between transactional requirements versus a longer term strategy and the behavioral drivers that feed into that. Garth, could you share us a little bit about how you create business cases to the board on the value of L&D?
Yeah, and it's funny, my background's TA, right? I've moved into people experience and landed with L&D more in my portfolio, so probably a little less traditional than some of the other panelists here in terms of how I've got there. So coming to L&D, and I'll get to the question, but in terms of measurement, right, TA is full of measurement. It's transactional. You can see and measure, and I think you can build business case. Jasley mentioned about metrics. What metrics can you build? What sort of things can you point to and say, we've moved the dial in these areas as a result of our L&D function? And I think that's what we're grappling with here at the moment, is a lot of L&D happens in spaces and places that we can't measure and we can't capture in neat boxes like some of the other areas, finance and TA in particular in the HR space, where you can do time and motion type studies to work out what's working and what's not working. So I think that's our challenge here. But it's funny working in a health business, that natural coaching is part of the healthcare industry. And it's like we forget that we can do something similar in our corporate space. So that idea of apprentice and master in some of our healthcare sectors is really powerful, where people do 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years of study to become doctors and medical practitioners, but they still need years of coaching and development by senior people to learn the skills and the behaviors that make them great practitioners. And I think if we took that sort of thinking to finance, IT, some of these other skills that are going to be, Fiona mentioned, like leading innovation. So if we can do a similar type of approach to innovation skills and change management skills, where people are learning from more experienced people in a really meaningful way, it's not in a book, it's not in an online learning course, it's in this experiential master apprentice type approach that we see in our medical business. We're trying to think about how do we drag that into our corporate function so that we can build, how do we get data science people to teach inexperienced people how to be better data scientists in a way that is meaningful, and to Udon's point earlier about embedding that training over a longer period of time, because it's not just information dumps, it's practical experiences that they get over a long period of time. So it's funny how we do that in our medical practices, but we don't necessarily do that in our corporate practices.
Thanks. Really relevant insights. And I guess what we're hearing is that organizations are in a bit of a transformation in terms of how we think about measuring and validating the effectiveness. Fiona, perhaps to you, what, in your opinion, what do you think should be measured? What should we be looking at?
Well, I love all the insights from the panelists today, and I've been taking copious notes actually. And what I have loved that has come from everyone today is how commercially oriented we are. I think that is exactly where we need to play. I also love the comment about the design of the metrics and how we need to make sure that our business partners and our executives are part of designing the metrics. We need to, and I think we need to bring them along on the journey as well, because only then will they truly own the outcomes. And they need to be involved if they are going to own the outcomes of the learnings that we're delivering to their wider team. It's so critical and important that they're right at the start designing the metrics that we're looking to aspire to achieve, so that they feel invested in those outcomes as well. Yeah, I just had a bit of a minor epiphany there as well, courtesy of my my panel members there. I also loved what Garth said there in terms of determining the impact of training is difficult, because we can't capture it in neat boxes. And I think that's what's encouraging us to be true leaders of innovation and disruption in the organisation, because we are challenged with being able to go back and demonstrate to our business partners that that success has been achieved, because it is difficult, it's challenging. Look, I think from my perspective, I always come back to measuring L&D from the perspective of the metrics that are important to our business partners. So at that point, there's two levels. It's measuring how it's contributing to the organisation's overall strategy and performance at the higher level. But then double clicking on that, if you like, and looking at how we're tying learning experiences to employee performance, and making sure that we're getting quite granular in relation to how the learning is positively impacting the person's job functional role or their delivery of that. And whether that's something like productivity or cycle time or customer or client feedback, just making sure that we're using those commercial metrics in determining the value of the learning that we're providing. And also looking at qualitative metrics as well. So not just quantitative, but looking at qualitative. And I think the other interesting thing that we're seeing, and I'm not quite sure that this is measurable either, but it definitely is, and we're seeing it sort of in our sphere, that great training and learning has an impact on not just the professional lives of our people, but on the personal lives of our people as well. And intuitively, we can all make that connection, right? When you're teaching people or coaching people on how to be better relationship builders professionally, that transfers to how they build better relationships outside work as well. And I mean, it's just an opportunity, I think, further down the track where how can we make sure that we're looking at a more holistic approach at measuring performance and not just putting it in that box of professional development.
Thanks. So I want to pivot to you, Bhavna. Leadership and talent development is a big organisation. You shared a little bit about what you've been looking to aspire there. Help us understand a little bit around the leadership development programs that you've been able to demonstrate impact and value to the business.
Sure. So Tim, I think, look, most of the time the expectation is that leadership development program will be done today and the impact would be tomorrow. But I think here, I must say that, here at Sodexo, we are a little bit reasonable with timing and, we don't expect magic to happen. So I think that's something, a kind of in a culture where the expectation of any investment is like a real investment. So what we did was in last year, we started, a cohort or a journey with Coach Hub with very simple 2 intentions. What we wanted to do was, one, we wanted to kind of democratize coaching using your platform. We felt that we've been doing a lot of coaching work in Sodexo across the world, but somewhere we are not able to measure and capture the impact. We don't have full visibility. There isn't a complete system which should be in place. And we felt that, if we can work with a world-class partner, I think that would be a great opportunity. So I think that's where we started. So one of the intention was to offer that, the opportunity to every single employee who wants, and that's where we started this cohort, and we started with our leadership. Now, the second intention for us was very simple. We wanted to enhance that human capability and capacity, which we talk about. Every single thing I believe that, a learning, talent management, development professional does is actually around enhancing that human capacity and capability, which further enhances the business result. Now, when I say human capacity and capability, if I double click on it, what I mean is actually the individual skills which they have, the leadership which they bring, and the culture of the organization. We've been doing a lot of upskilling in the training programs. We have a huge, portfolio of training programs, but we felt somewhere that, when it comes to the culture and the leadership, there is something which we can do much better. And, when it comes to leadership, management, or behavior, I think this is such a personal and private to each person. And that's where we thought, we will start with a pilot of a group of leaders and we'll see how their experience is. They've been attending a lot of training programs, but I think there is an opportunity to reflect. I think coaching simply for me is just playing a tape of your own game with someone and then reflecting on it. So I think that was, those were our simple intention to offer that safe space to our leaders to have that personal journey and be comfortable with that.
Thanks, Bhavna. Thank you so much for sharing us your journey. And culture plays a really big part in the success of any of these L&D initiatives. Justly, how are you driving a continuous, self-directed, lifelong learning culture at your organisation?
Great, good questions. Culture is nothing more than just behavior or unspoken rules of how a group of people that's acting in a certain way, right? So to drive a continuous self-directed learning, I believe that it's all about changing or embedding behavior into habit, and habit becomes natural self. I think, again, when I saw Yidan mention about habit learning, I think it's so relevant because at the end of the day, but the natural self, if they don't come with a spirit of continuous learning, what's next? It's about motivations. Because once we know what will motivate them to the outcome that we want, which is the learning, that's where you can integrate the two together. So to embed the self-learning or continuous learning, so we must first understand the behavior of our people. Are they what is the level of learning appetite? And do we even need to motivate them? Let's say the organizations have like a long history where directed learning, everyone was just being called to attend training and therefore they attend them. I mean, they present themselves just to attend for the training. So it's a very directed learning. Self-learning, I think in the younger generation these days, we have seen a lot where they Google with all the solutions. They YouTube, they do all the short bite learning. It's all self-directed. And what is this? This is a behavior, and this is the habit or the natural self. It's natural true self. Then when it comes to a corporates where we have a different generations, and we encourage the older generations where they are not so used to self-directed learning because they're waiting for HR to tell me what to learn, that I learn, right? So this way we start to look at what is the motivation factor. Is it a reward, or is it a gamification, or is it a career? Then that's how you are shifting the behavior into a natural self. So I would say that to have a continuous learning, if you have a workforce where automatic, that works well. If without, look at the behavior, motivation factor, bind it together, and then it becomes the corporate identity. If not, of course, at the end of the day, HR, we can always advocate for learning and then clock in hours and then do the dashboard to show that, oh, this is the numbers of training hours we have achieved, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, what's the outcome? It's not there, right? So that is the gap. That's, I think, as a progressive HR, we have to stand up, do things differently. So that's to really bring the self-directed learning as part of the culture, which is the behavior. That's what I think. Yeah.
So Fiona, your observations, you speak with L&D leaders across the region, as also you have your own experience and capacity. Perhaps summarize some of the secrets that we've uncovered so far.
I've been taking lots of notes as we've been going through the session. I guess I can start to boil it down to a number of different themes that I've heard today. First of all, I think there's an acknowledgement that that lifelong learning is critical. It's not a set and forget exercise, but also that we're finding organisations are investing in people development and lifelong learning really seriously. And I do love that concept of lifelong learning. Even that feels like a transformational shift from where we've been. So I'm just really excited that that we're investing in this as a concept. And I'm excited as we start to build organisations for the future, for our kids, that they're going to have this more enlightened experience than perhaps we did when we first kicked off our careers. So that's one, that it's really critical. I guess the next one is it's been really interesting listening to the fact that it needs to be personalised. That it needs to meet people where they are. It needs to be relevant and real. And I think what I've heard from the panelists today is that it really needs to go beyond traditional instruction. There's always going to be a role for that. There's always going to be a role for traditional delivery. But I think what we're finding as we put our arms around the concept of lifelong learning is that it needs to go beyond that. And I think we've all been in a position where we're challenging ourselves to be innovative as a result of that. I think also what I'm really excited about is this whole concept of the fact that it does need to be available widely and also scalable. And I was just reflecting as I was listening to the panelists on I know a customer that we're working with in Asia Pac. It's a global pharmaceutical device company, and we're actually piloting a digital coaching program for their retirees. And I've done a lot of work in the aged care industry in the past, and I just think it's fantastic that we're not putting the blockers on in relation to who is interested in learning and development and who might want to access it through a different platform. because I know that we're all struggling and challenged with talent shortages, and to be able to offer a program like this to the older generation, I think is truly inspirational, and it's also going to meet a real business need that we have. So it's not just about the millennials or the younger workforce, but it's also how can we offer something that's real and relevant and personal across a multi-generational workforce for maximum impact. So I guess there's some of the, I'm not sure whether it's secrets, it's more insights that I've heard across the session. I always get great insights from you, Dan. I'm one of her biggest fans, so it's always great to listen to her presentation. And I did love how she framed that learning now cannot be standalone, that it needs to be in the flow of work. And I 100% agree with that as well. So yeah, no, I guess that's what I've picked up.
So final piece on the theme of lifelong learning. We have some amazing people, leaders on the call. I want to pivot to your own personal journeys very quickly, if I can. How have you developed or trained your own inner resilience and mindset to your role in this ever-changing landscape? Garth, perhaps we can hear from you first.
In terms of resilience, I think one of the things that I think about resilience as a word, it's, for me, it was a buzzword. It was a thing that people really strived for, and I don't think people understood, and particularly through COVID, I think the word resilience, I'm going to preference mindset, right? So resilience, I think, has become a badge of honor. I'm resilient. It means that I'm here till 10 o'clock at night. I think it's become people haven't quite understood how that word, or what that word was supposed to mean. Whereas I think the idea of a mindset about how do I approach work, how do I approach my interactions, how do I approach my outputs. I think if you're thinking about that in a conscious way, every day you come to work and every transaction you have with someone, it's a better way of measuring success than resilience. Because I do feel pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, that resilient word has changed, particularly in something like healthcare, where some of our people were working 16, 20-hour days to get nasal swabs and tests back. So I want to think about mindset more as we move post-pandemic, and where am I and how am I feeling and what am I doing, and does it give me joy and pleasure to be doing these things, as opposed to sort of resilience as a concept.
And Bhavna, as you look back on your career journey, what advice would you give to someone who may be looking to follow in your footsteps?
I think, Tim, the tricky one, but I would still say, is that I wouldn't recommend anybody to follow anyone's footstep. I think finding your own path is the best approach. It's tempting, however, you may end up being very dissatisfied end of your career. But don't follow my footsteps. But what advice I will give is that, have that will. Don't worry about the skill. If you have that will, you will get the skill. Put yourself in the harder context, which will increase your capacity. It doesn't matter whether you know the content or not. Once you are in that hard context, you will become the master of the content. One of the struggles which I had, I think, being Asian, being raised in a place where, first you need to know, that's the kind of a mindset. So I think that unlearning it and forgetting about that, I don't need to worry about the skill. Let's have the will and then we'll figure that out. So I think that's something which I would share.
Thank you. And Jasly, anything from your side?
You know what? Being a Chinese, Asian, it's not Chinese. I love what Confucius says about the great learnings. Like, the way of learning to be great consists of manifesting the clear characters and loving the people and abiding to the highest good. So essentially what it means is manifest the good or models, mannerisms that we aspire to be, and be empathetic and uphold the right spirit. And where I remember that Nelson Mandela, he always says, I never lose. I either win or learn. So at the end of the day, it's the attitude. And I like what Greg has said is about the mindset. You can be positive, but without wisdoms, you will not learn and apply the greater goods of experience and decisions.
Excellent, excellent words to end us on. Let's see if we've got a question that we could take in the final moment. While that comes up, okay, we do have a couple of questions here. Fantastic. So a great question I might pose to Bhavna. What must be in place before an organisation can scale coaching across their mid-level management?
So thanks for the question. And what my experience tells me that I think the approach of starting from top is very tempting to scale coaching. But I've seen sometimes it just stops there. So my recommendation would be that, we have to start everywhere in the organization, starting with small pilots, tackling with different groups, with different objectives to achieve. When you do that, I think you create impacts in different bubbles. You also touch different levels of organization, different geography, different teams. And that's where, you are testing and you are collecting real-time data that what's the impact. So my recommendation would be use the approach where you are having multiple pilots in different segments, different groups of people, different geography, different age. Not only offering them coaching as a solution, but also really educating them about coaching skills, because sometimes people don't understand coaching, and to receive the desired impact of the coaching, you really need to know how coaching sometimes works. So that would be my long answer to your question, Tim.
Thanks, Bhavna.
And maybe I can add on.
Go ahead.
Yeah, if you don't mind. Yeah. So in my organizations, we strongly advocate for coaching. So what we did was, myself and my CEO, we partnered together and coached the director, which is a skip level, because my level is considered GM. So directors report to GM. So CEO and myself, we coach the directors. So every month we come together to discuss upon certain topic, and then the directors will partner with the GM, with a different department, to coach the rest of the manager in a group configuration. So firstly, introduce the concept of coaching so that they understand, our leader is doing the coaching and the C-level is doing coaching, and now we are in the coaching room together with the leaders and understand and appreciate how coaching can help them. So that is stage one. So prior to that, you may want to do measurement like any L&D, right? Where is the baseline? So the baseline, I know that Idan doesn't like the 360, but the 360 is where we use as a baseline to determine where are we today. Then at the end of the manager coaching that we do it company-wide, then we do another 360 on the as we call SLT, which is a senior leadership, which is the director level, to look at the quality of people, whether it have increased. That's one. The other one, how do we measure on the success, is also the managers, after they have learned throughout the whole years of the coaching, partner with the GMs and SLT. So what we do was, I get all my business partners to read all the performance appraisal. We literally read all the performance appraisals to look at the qualities of people, giving them feedback and giving the employees the career advice. So this is how we look at the baseline or second year. So that's how you may want to scale it to see the quality. And on the second years, once you know where are we standing, you may want to consider whether or not do you want to get external expertise to train our people on the coaching methodologies. Then, of course, you may also consider to engage Coach Hub, which is on specific cases on the coach as a needs basis. So that's how my organization is currently doing, and we have been doing this for the last almost 3 years now. No, 2 years plus, 2 years plus.
Fantastic.
I hope
Thank you.
that can help you.
Yes, clearly Nakul's question had a lot of interest. There's one that we have from Japan, from Kei Kobayashi. How would you respond to this comment from the business? Do we really need L&D people who just administrate the class of training but don't care how much pressure salespeople are under facing demanding customers? It's an interesting one. Who would like to respond to that question?
Tim, this is where, I said that we don't share our problems with stakeholders. And I think the day we will start to share our problems and out loud, I think we will not get some these kind of questions and comments. And to the participant who's asked, just totally ignore this comment if you receive it. I think this is the ignorance of some of the group of people speaking, not the reality.
Yeah.
And it's not just our problems, it's their problems, right? It's the organizational problems. So set the scene, right? I don't think we do that enough in HR generally. You set the scene, we jump to solution mode very quickly, where if we set the scene and set the problem and set the consequences, often in L&D, because there's not a problem, it's if we don't do it, what are the consequences? So the problem and the consequences of action and non-action are just important as the answer. So agree, we need to make sure that we're selling the problem as well as the solution.
If I have this question, I will ask the business, like, what is the issue? Number one, is it demanding that our people not able to deal with customers on the demand, or there's no time to attend training? So what's the root cause? Because as an L&D or HR professionals, once we know the root cause, then we will know what are the solutions to propose. So if they're facing customers demanding are not able to handle, yes, then we're going to provide a training solutions how to handle difficult customers. If the problem is they are not even able to come up with the time to attend training, then it's a time management problem. So what is the real problems?
And I also wonder what metrics are being measured for success here. And to Wagner's point, I think it's starting with designing those metrics of success with the business, as opposed to trying to demonstrate value after the fact. Because then you're as we would say, Garth, on a hiding to nothing at that point.
Yes.
In Australian language.
Well, thank you. Thank you to all 4 guests that we have here on our panel today, Bhavna, Jasali, Garth and Fiona. Really appreciate your time and all the insights that you've shared with us. So thank you so much for joining. We are at that moment that that you've all been waiting for, all those on the line. It's our surprise lucky draw, and I'm sure you all want to know what the prize is. We're giving away today Amazon and JD.com e-gift cards, and we have 5 lucky winners from those people who are part of our audience today. So the winner actually also has the option of not physically receiving the e-gift card. Instead, Coach Hub can plant trees in your local community on your behalf through our CSR partner, Ecosia. So, drum roll please. And the lucky winners are... I'm seeing the names. Nikki Swift from Macquarie Group in Australia. We have JG Leung from Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation in Malaysia. Varinda Kumar Verma from Maruti Suzuki in India. Andrew Nip, LVMH Group in Shanghai. And Evan McKenzie from Tokyo Marine Group in Japan. Congratulations to all the winners, and thank you everyone for joining today's live streaming session. Please give us your feedback, your thoughts in the comments section, and don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn and WeChat for updates as to our next session in the Lifelong Learning series, which is on the 22nd of September. We have confirmed guests and HR panelists from Amazon Web Services, ASM Pacific Technology, Graincorp, and Societe Generale. We're really looking forward to seeing you there. Take care and see you next time.
Are we good to go?
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for the great session. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Great work.
Thanks.